and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings.
I think a new world order is emerging.
An inside job? How dare you? How dare you?
To create, so to say, mass-produced models of human beings arranged in some kind of a scientific caste system.
We shall go on to the end. We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall never surrender.
Yeah, this is nice. All right, guys. Let's see what we can do here. Let's see. Let me know. This is UCY.TV, coming to you from New York. I'm sorry about the delay, guys. This is my fault. Totally my fault. I'm totally unprepared. I mean, I don't even have something to drink here. So that's one of the first things I'm going to do, like get me a cup of tea or something. I'm really sorry. It totally slipped my mind. I was coming home from work, and while driving home, I remembered that I had to do shopping first. So I went shopping first, like groceries, right? Need to eat. Yeah. So then I got home. I have my ritual for coming home, taking off the work clothes and shizzle like that. No drink for me, says Hop. Yeah, you're right. I should be punished for not showing up on time. Hold on, guys. I'm gonna put some water on the kettle, on the fire, in the kettle. So I don't know if you guys can hear this, but apparently 2 stories above me, they're like rebuilding a home or something. Lots of drilling going on. I sure hope it doesn't come on. I mean, I can even feel it here from the table and from my feet. So, but it's 3 stories up. Let's assume we have phones. I'm not quite sure about that, but you can try. 718-717-8296. So this is UCY.tv with the Solvinur Event. I'm your host, Solvinur, coming to you from the Netherlands, where it's 7 p.m. on the 7th of December 2016. Those were a lot of 7s. Even the last 16 is a 7, right? So, yeah, Hopper here is buzzing. Yeah, that's their drilling. So, yeah, I can even feel it through my feet. Crappy buildings, these buildings. All right, so I have we could go off. We could take off where we left off last week. We were reading, I think, here, but it doesn't remember where I was. So where were we? Sankhya Yoga is way too far. We were still doing chapter 1, which is basically an introduction. It's like a setting, the first chapter. Do you think I should go up there and tell these people to fucking cut it out? Because I can't make radio like this? Or not? Anyway, this first chapter is like a setting. It's a description of the place where it all takes place. And in chapter 2, it actually takes off. So most of the times when this book is read in the cults, they skip chapter 1. Because it's not necessary to read it. So, you know, in the years that I've been making radio here, I've told enough about the settings for this happening here, which is the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Thanks, Del. Thanks, that's cool. That helps. At least you guys have good audio. So, it's the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and depending on who you want to believe, this is 5 to 7,000 years ago. Some people claim it's younger than that. I wouldn't buy that. It's either 5 or 7, not 3, as some people might claim. Yeah. Yeah. Nice one, Matty. Yeah. Apple. Where's my lighter? Does this one work? No. There we go. And it took place with bows, with spears, with maces, which are like not the kind of mace you would encounter in a video game of nowadays. Those are more like, those are like way too small. The maces they used in this battle were like really big. I doubt I could pick one up, to be honest with you. It's so heavy. And there were rules to mace fighting, which is also a story in itself within this whole epic of the battlefield of Kurukshetra. There's a certain point two mace fighters are fighting it out, and it takes very, very long, and all of a sudden one of the fighters gets the advice to break the rules. See? Apparently they were fighting with rules in that war. Like another rule is, war starts at sunrise. War ends at sundown. Because after the sundown, these people would actually come together and drink a cup of tea. You see? Enemy or not, that doesn't matter. Alright, so my water is boiling, guys. I'm gonna make myself something to drink. I'll be back as soon as possible. Alright. We've got all the ingredients at hand, which is citroen. In Dutch it's citroen. I guess in English it's citron or something like that. Citrus maybe, I'm not exactly sure. Citrus tea. Ta-da! And a cup with some water. So, let's see if I can think of other rules. And one other rule in this war is you do not attack a man that's down. Definition of down being not on your feet with weapons in your hands. So no attacking people that were not armed either. Right? So if you're in this battle, you're standing there with your mace and you see somebody with a bow, you can go ahead and attack him. But if you see somebody there with just a loincloth, you're not even allowed to attack him. See? Apparently, and I'm not sure if this is true, you know, this may all be just lies, so to speak, but apparently they had like moral codes when it comes to war. Even nowadays, they speak about that. Okay, I'm very radical. I mean, I'm extremely radical when it comes to war. I'm thinking like, if the situation is so bad that you have to go to war, then there are no rules. I mean, that's war to me. It's as simple as that. Why would you have rules if it's a fracking war? You see? If you've already let the situation escalate into a war, you've already lost, to be honest with you. Intellectually speaking, that is. But if you're on that point, then why would you install rules of war? That doesn't make any sense to me. that yeah, it weakens the concept of war, in my opinion. So, I mean, otherwise you could call a boxing fight in a ring, you could call that a war also, but they don't, you see? No, there's rules for that. Right, right, so that's not a war, huh? See how, you know, I make my own definitions for words since, actually since even before I woke up. And in the sense that there was this, I had this basic understanding of Dutch, and things like a Department of Defense immediately fell through, because it's not a defense, you see, it's offense. So it should be called Department of Offense. So in that sense, I've always made my own definitions for words. And it doesn't jive with other people's definition of words. And this leads to a lot of conflict in communicating. Because there's a lot of noise. What's noise? Noise is that which makes it harder to understand somebody else. Because they, for instance, have different definitions for the words that are used. You see? That's why I always try to explain as much as possible the terms that I use. Especially if I think that it's ambiguous. Words like spiritual, it's very ambiguous. Or consciousness. Yeah, we need to define those kinds of words before you should have a discussion about it, right? And so this is what happens in the Bhagavad Gita that we are going to read. There will be a lot of grammar. I'm assuming now that you've familiarized yourself with the trivium by now. If not, it's your fault. All right, so there's a lot of grammar in the Bhagavad Gita. And some of this grammar is very subtle, so to speak. It's hard to grasp. Somebody says in the chat, this is the nature of war. I'm going to read this without checking it, right? So, this is the nature of war, whose stake is at once the game and the authority and the justification. Seen so, war is the truest form of divination. It is the testing of one's will and the will of another within that larger will, which, because it binds them, is therefore forced to select. War is the ultimate game, because war is at last a forcing of the unity of existence. War is God. This is from Cormac McCarthy, Blood Meridian, or the evening redness in the west. All right, so I don't know what he means with war. Strange ideas he has. Juan Ataco says, Edward Bernays recommended the U.S. Department of War to change their name to the Department of Defense. Yes, of course. I didn't know that was him, but yeah, that's the way they do that, right? It used to be honest. Department of War. That's clear, and it's unambiguous, right? It's the same here in the Netherlands. We call it Ministry of Defense, like Ministry of Truth and such. Yeah. It's the Ministry of Defense, and they send people out to Afghanistan and Iraq to go kill other people. Yeah, that's defense. Because, you know, we got so many Afghanis and Iraqis here tearing up homes and stuff like that. Yeah. So, War. Yeah, it's a racket, right? Smedley Butler. That's another reason why I use my definition for war. I don't accept the definitions for war that are used in the mainstream media. That's not war, that's a fracking game, as here Cormac McCarthy indeed says. In that sense, it's a fracking game. True war has no rules. I'll tell you something. It's the war, and now I'm using it, and in my definition, that is being waged against us as humans, not as an Iraqi or an American or a Canadian or a German. No, as people. It's the war on us. That is really a true war. There's no, they don't have rules for how they wage war on us. It's an all-out war. Well, they have rules in the sense that they disguise themselves. But that's not really a rule of war in the sense that we talked about it in the beginning, like I said, with the mace wars. You weren't allowed to hit somebody on the thigh, for instance. You're not allowed to hit somebody that's down, you see? Those kind of rules. Doesn't make any sense to me in a war. Then it's not a war, it's a stage. It's a play. If you're going to abide by these rules. Here's another one from Vincent. War dominates life's interaction. It places self as foremost. It is the untrue anarchy. Juana Taco says the century of the self. You can find it again now on YouTube. BBC had it prohibited for copyrights, but it's up again. Somebody apparently put it up again. And The Trap is also back on, both from the same maker. Both are worth watching. So, on these, in this Bhagavad Gita, there's a lot of grammar which is subtle. This is where I tried to pick it up like 10 minutes ago or so. It's subtle in the sense, and I'll try to give you one description, which come from the Vedas, and of course that is in Sanskrit, and so in English. You can't really English Sanskrit. It's undoable in the sense that you've heard me translate these words word for word. And if you put these words together, you don't get a sentence, you see. So you can't really English Sanskrit. But here's one idea or concept that's from the Vedas, and it's about seeing with your eyes. And they point to the fact that it's not so much that you can act, well, it is made a point in the sense that it's actually fantastic, that it's like a very nice tool, right? If you didn't have eyes, if you were blind, you would constantly walk into trees or stumble over things, right? So it's a good sense. However, they point out that the most important thing is not the fact that you can see, but that there is something that gives you the ability to see. And it ties to consciousness, right? What use are eyes if there's no observer there, right? And don't mix observer with consciousness now. Those are two different things. And they know that in the Vedas as well. They make that distinction. That's a good link, Del. Thank you. I'm not quite sure if the phones are working. I haven't seen Jules, but you can try 718-717-8296. 718-717-8296. Welcome everybody in the chat. Dale, Mr. Franco, Grump, Hopper, Juana Taco, Matty Clues, Vince, and 3 Anons. Yeah. If you have any like questions about ancient Indian philosophy, do ask, and I'll see what I can do. Blah, blah. So we'll pick this up from in chapter 2. Put the chat there so I can keep an eye on any questions. Chapter 2 is called Sankhya Yoga. In see, yoga in this sense and in all the other chapters where this word is used is best seen as a verb meaning to connect. This chapter 2 is basically a summary of the whole book. It's 18 chapters, but in chapter 2, which contains, I think, something like 62 verses or so, the whole thing is kind of summarized. So this is the most difficult part of the whole book, chapter 2, in a sense. So, a short reminder of the setting. Sanjaya is sitting at the court of Dhritarashtra, who's the king, who's sitting with his wife in his palace, hearing from Sanjaya what's going on in the battlefield. Now, this king is blind, and that is, in a sense, is very strange, because according to law, you can't have a blind king. And there's a whole story to this, and maybe I'll tell it sometime, unless you want me to tell it now, and I'll see what I can dig up from my memory. But the fact is that in the story, his wife, who was married to the king, and not like we do here in Western, like two people meet, they like each other and they marry. No, these are arranged marriages, right? So this woman had to marry this Dhritarashtra who was blind. And when she heard that she was blind, she immediately took a blindfold and blinded herself. This is the way a woman follows a man. This ties back to the, I would say, backwards way in which women are treated in these kinds of societies. I hope I made that clear. Sanjaya, now I'm gonna start reading here. Sanjaya explains the condition of Arjuna, who was agitated due to attachment and fear. Now this first sentence is basically pretty important. The second part says, who was agitated due to attachment and fear. The word attachment is one that will come back a lot. And Yeah, it's basically what it says. In Dutch, it's the same, and it's very clear. It's very unambiguous, but you won't get it, so to speak, when you hear this stuff for the first time. It says here, Sanjaya explains the condition of Arjuna. So we're talking about a condition of a human being. The human being was agitated due to attachment and fear. Now, the word attachment, you know what it means, but you have a Western interpretation of this word, and it's pretty unambiguous when you English this Sanskrit word attachment. They don't mean something they don't mean something material in a sense wouldn't be correct to say, but I'll try to explain it. It's pretty hard. They don't and they do mean, that's where you run into these fracking contradictions, trying to explain stuff that has to do with Eastern philosophy. They don't and they do have a view of materialism when they're using the word attachment. They don't when you take their whole basic philosophy and see that they do not see themselves as their bodies. That is what we Westerners do. We identify with our bodies. And that's also a reason, a source, a cause for the attachment. Your identification with your body is a source for the attachment. Now, because they do not identify themselves with their bodies, but with their soul, their jiva or atma, whatever you want to call it, that is the non-material part of how they look at attachment. When the material part, when it comes to attachment, is first that you identify with your body, then from that flows a whole series. I've said this before. It could be used to justify natural law, for instance. That's also like, I'm here, I'm born in this world, this is my body, nobody else decides what I can do with my body, right? This is natural law. A step further is actually identifying with your body, thinking that you are your body. This is a mistake. I'll go into that a little. Hi Otto, welcome buddy. You're late, but don't worry, so was I. So why is it wrong to identify with your body? Well, first of all, it's unfortunate that you speak English. If you were German or Dutch, you would actually see why you would not identify with your body. Because if you translate the word body into Dutch or English, you get the word corpse. Yes, dead, as in not living. In German, it's Körper. Notice the etymological tie to corpse in English. In Dutch, it's lichaam. The first part of that sentence means lijk, which means a corpse. The second part of that word means haam, which means that which surrounds you. So you see, you are surrounded by a corpse. This is the literal translation of the Dutch word body. But let's leave that aside and just think. If you cut off your legs and if you cut off your arms, are you now somebody else? Or are you still the same person? You might look different, but have you changed? Or did your body change? when you claim to say, well, I am my body, when you cut off your nails, do you like cut off pieces of yourself and you take your nail and you say, this is me? You don't do that, right? When you cut off your hair and you take a look at your hair, do you say, this is me? You don't, do you? It's because you have a kind of natural tendency not to identify with things that you are not. The mistake, however, comes when we identify with our body. This is a mistake. It's a philosophical error. It's bad thinking. Now, I've given you in the past a definition for the word mind. It was thinking, feeling, and wanting. This is basically a Western, for as far as I can make it, a scientific definition for the word mind. Thinking, feeling, wanting. However, I think it's much bigger than that. You have a mind. I think you could take in Jung and come to the concept of a mind of a society, like some kind of subconscious or unconscious field, so to speak. This is also not what you are. You have a mind. You can think. You can ask questions. You do feel. You do want things. And notice that we've not even touched on the subject of free will here. We're just using the word want, which is something else than will. This is also something that you have to your it's at your convenience. It's at your, is that a good word? No, I don't think so. It's at your service. Your mind is something that should be used by you as a tool. And of course, you do not identify with the tool that you are using. You are not your mind either. These are very important ideas to remember when listening to this second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. It's like I did. When I read it, I didn't have somebody there to show me all the mistakes in my thinking. I had to read it once, I had to read it twice, I had to read it 3 times, and then it finally struck me, oh, this is where these people are coming from. It was like a totally 180-degree turnabout of how you look at things. So I don't expect you to understand what's going on in this second chapter. It's because you're not used to the idea of not identifying with your body. Because you do. You do. Most people are afraid of death, for instance. That is because you identify with your body. You think that, oh, I'm gonna die and then there's nothing. You see? It's because you identify with your body. If you don't, you will not be afraid of death. Death has no meaning to you if you do not identify with your body, or your mind for that matter. Hold on, guys. Let me take a drink. So try to keep that in mind, that these people, these writers of these stories, thought of themselves as souls. They are living beings, is the best Western term I could use for that. trying not to use these ambiguous words as souls, although living being is not much less ambiguous, because it's fracking hard to define. It's really hard to define. I mean, I've listened to hundreds of hours of Rupert Sheldrake, and he's a biologist, right? I haven't heard him make a definition for life. Not that I fault him for that. You know, he was taught in school, as he pointed out himself, is so materialism based that it's no wonder these people can't get a definition straight. Because they think that life comes from matter, which is a mistake. Life does not come from matter. So if you have that philosophy, then you can never come up with a good definition for life. It doesn't work. So the best position I can give you to listen to these verses, which we're, I hope, going to come to if I stop talking myself and do the text here before we get to the verses. If you take the position when listening to these verses of I'm a living being, and just leave it at that, leave it undefined, maybe not. Leave it open is the best word. Yes, leave it open. But you are a living being. I mean, who can deny that, right? Who can deny that you're a living being? And that much seems certain, right? So there's no fallacy going on here. There's no error in thinking going on here. Think of yourself as a living being and look at the verses and the words, and I'll try to westernize these Eastern ideas for you when we do these verses. All right, so this was just the first sentence of the summary of the second discourse. We'll see if we can do an alinea here, right? So Arjuna is agitated and his bow fell to the floor and his hair stands on end, and he just can't fight like this. And he says to Krishna, what am I supposed to do? Krishna, Lord Krishna rebukes him for his dejection, which was due to moha, or attachment, and exhorts him to fight. After failing to convince Sri Krishna through his seemingly wise thoughts, Arjuna realizes his helplessness and surrenders himself completely to the Lord, seeking his guidance to get over the conflict of his mind. So here that word attachment is used again, see? Lord Krishna rebukes him for his dejection, which was due to moha, or attachment. This attachment is something that you do. I think I must emphasize this. It's really important for understanding the whole rest of the months of radio that we're going to do on this. It is you who are attaching to things. What comes from attachment is a false identification. And it's also the other way around. If you identify with your body, you will automatically attach to things that are not of your nature. Yeah, I'm trying to put this in as Western terms as I can do, guys. When you identify with your body, you will automatically attach to things that are not of your nature. This is a truly Eastern philosophy idea. This is the best way I can put it in English. And I must emphasize again that it is you who are attaching. If you have a Porsche and you like your Porsche and you just go driving out because you like driving out in your Porsche, then you've attached to your car. And when the car goes broken, you know, you're not happy. You see? That's also a consequence of attaching to things. When the car breaks, you feel rotten. You got to pay money again. If you do not attach to the car, you can simply use it as a tool. And you won't be upset if it breaks down because you're not attached to it. Do you guys understand the word attachment a little bit now? It's like it's a tie between you and that which you attach to. You are tying yourself to the material world. It's your own fracking fault. It's your own fracking fault. You're doing it yourself. You attach to things. If you didn't attach to things, you wouldn't be so materially broken, I suppose, is the word. Remember Rupert saying a couple of videos ago that he went to India and a lot of other places where people are poor. And in Haiti, for instance, also this was noticed. These people are dirt poor. But guess what? They are more happy than we are here in the Western world. Do you know how many people are depressed here in the Western world? It's fracking amazing. And it's not rocket science to me that is the case. It's because of all the attachments that we have, especially us here in the Western world. We attach to so many things, we've completely lost ourselves. Because that's also what happens when you attach to things. You lose yourself. It's as simple as that. In some cases, and I'll use a car as an example. You become that which you attach to. And in a car, it's a good thing in the sense that you know how to steer, not to hit the bumps and stuff. You can actually feel yourself becoming the car. If that's not the case, you're a dangerous driver. I'm a driver myself. I know what happens. You step into the car, all of a sudden, your quote-unquote ego becomes bigger. You become bigger. You become the car. And that's good that happens. Otherwise, you wouldn't be driving safely, you see? Same goes with a tennis racket, for instance. These pro tennisers, do you think that they have this tennis racket in their hand and they think, this is a tennis racket? No. It's part of their body. That's how they use it. To them, it's an extension of their body, like a car is an extension of your body. They identify with it so much that they don't have to look at the racket to know how to hit the ball. It's just a part of their body. That's also a form of attachment. All right, so here's another one. I got one in my hand. Cigarettes. See, I smoke cigarettes. I'm attached to tobacco. Yeah. I'm attached to my computer because I play World of Warcraft on it. Yeah. So those are the kinds of attachments that we Westerners suffer from. Because the more we attach, the more we lose ourselves. The more you attach, the more you lose your natural state of being. All right, let's try because we went to the comma. We'll try to do the rest. Lord Krishna rebukes him for his dejection, which was due to moha or attachment, and exhorts him to fight. He wants him to fight. Krishna is a warmonger. Remember last week or the week before that, they said that Krishna was trying to settle the whole thing so that a war wouldn't be needed. You should see what he's doing now to get Arjuna to murder his family. This is a warmonger, this Krishna. He's getting Arjuna to kill his masters, his teachers, his family. You see? All right, so we did this one. We'll get to the next. It says here, Krishna takes pity on him and proceeds to enlighten him by various means. He explains to Arjuna the imperishable nature of the Atman, for which there is no past, present, and future. I'll stop here and I'll read this again. It's pretty important. Krishna takes pity on him and proceeds to enlighten him by various means. He explains to Arjuna the imperishable nature of the Atman, for which there is no past, present, and future. Do you guys remember last week I was talking about time also, and that some things are time independent? Remember that? This is what Krishna is talking about here. He's talking about the nature of Atman, or the nature of Jiva, or the nature of soul, or the nature of Brahman. These are all more or less interchangeable, in the sense that Brahman is not a person here, but more like a field. Call it a field of consciousness for all I care. So this is the important thing. These people think of imperishable nature of the non-material. Let's just call it that. The non-material. And for the non-material, there is no past. There's no present and there is no future. Why? Because the non-material, or maybe you want to call it spiritual, I don't know, you know. That's possible, depends on your definition of the word. For the spiritual, time has no meaning. For the spiritual, time is a toy, like space is a toy, like water is a toy to play with, you see? Continuing, after the Atman never dies. Therefore, Arjuna should not grieve. As it transcends the 5 elements, namely earth, water, fire, air, and ether, it cannot be cut, burned, or dried. It is unchanging and eternal. Could say a lot about this, but one of the most important things at this moment is the word ether here. This is a word that was invented by Faraday, who came up with the idea of fields when it comes to electronics and stuff like that. And people were asking him, well, what are these fields made of? And he said, well, I don't know. But you know, it's like a field of a magnet, for instance. You can't see it, right? It's not like you can see like lines of force moving out of the magnet. It doesn't work like that. But it has an effect on matter. You see? So it seems to be a non-material thing that has an effect on matter. And he, Mr. Faraday, bless his name, his whatever, came up with the idea of an ether through which these forces are moving. Now, apparently, later Einstein came along and disproved the need for ether. Now, I wonder how he did that. You know, apparently it is, Rupert said that Einstein disproved the existence of ether. Now, that's a philosophical no-no, for as far as I know, because you can't prove that something is not there. It's as simple as that. It's impossible to prove that something is not there. Especially when Mr. I forgot his name, with the cage, Faraday, arbitrarily comes up with this idea of an ether through which these fields are moving, through which these fields manifest their forces. You see? So how Einstein can say, well, this doesn't exist is a mystery to me, because I think it's a good idea. It's just a concept, you know, this ether. Doesn't necessarily have to exist for all I care. It's just as long as you can use it to explain things. Of course, Einstein saw it a little different. You know, he probably has a better idea of how gravity and space and time and all those things work together. But the fact is that this word ether is now here used as a translation from Sanskrit, you see. So the point, the really important question is, how did these Sanskrit writing people come up with this term that we now translate as ether? See? It's very important. These 5 elements, earth, water, fire, air, and ether, notice it starts with earth, which is like very gross. You can actually have that in your hand and it won't even fall off. Water, you can't already hold that in your hand anymore because it'll just fall off, you see. Fire, you can't even grasp that. Air, it's still more subtle. And ether is like still subtler than air. So you see it goes from dense to less dense, less dense, less dense, less dense. And that's important. These 5 elements are actually a part of a verse later, I think in chapter 4 or something, where it's complemented with mind, intelligence, and ego. These are very important elements as well. We've talked about it in the beginning of the show. These are tools for living beings. And I guess I'll have to pick this up next week because it's already 58. I hope you guys had something. That's Dutch. Had er wat aan. Can't translate that literally, you fool. I hope you guys had a good show, let's put it that way. And I'll pick this up next week, trying to make more pointers to what is called Atman, or Jiva, from which you get the word rejuvenate. So that's it for me this week, guys. Thanks, Del, Jen, Hopper, Joanna, Matty Clues, Vince, and Tuanons. I'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.
To create, so to say, mass-produced models of human beings arranged in some kind of a scientific caste system.
We shall go on to the end.